The world often assumed that having money made everything easy, but it came with its own heavy, silent responsibilities. She watched birds glide over the water as she thought about the previous day. The people on the bus had judged her because of how she looked. The regular traveler, with a worn jacket, quiet, unassuming. No one had expected her to speak up. No one had expected her to be someone of influence. And that, she realized, was exactly why she traveled quietly. It reminded her how people treated each other when they didn't think someone important was watching. After a while, she stood up and walked toward the small marketplace. She bought a handmade scarf from a vendor who spoke with gentle pride about her craft. She purchased some fruits from a farmer whose wrinkled face lit up when he saw someone appreciate his produce. Every interaction reminded her why she loved these simple moments. But peace rarely lasted long for her. As she wandered through the market, she suddenly heard her full name called out loudly. It echoed through the crowd. Dozens of heads turned. A young man holding a phone was pointing it straight at her. Her heart dropped. "It is her," he shouted. "See? I told you all. Look, it's trending." People around her whispered. Others took out their phones. Some looked confused, some curious, and some overly excited. She kept her voice steady. "Please don't film me." But the young man didn't stop. He stepped closer, phone still raised. "Can we get a picture? Just one, please?" More phones came up. She took a slow breath. She didn't want to cause a scene, and she certainly didn't want to be rude. But she also didn't want her day or her privacy to be pulled apart in front of strangers. She stepped back. "I'm sorry, but not right now," someone whispered. "She's just pretending," another murmured. "Maybe she thinks she's too good for us." The comments stung. Even though she knew she shouldn't let them, the young man finally lowered his phone, frustration clouding his face. "Fine," he muttered. "But everyone's talking about you. It's not like you can hide." She didn't respond. She turned and walked away. Her pace steady, though her chest felt heavy as she moved through the marketplace. Some people gave her warm smiles as if trying to make up for the others. A few even nodded respectfully. But she kept moving until she returned to the quieter streets near the guest house. She sat on the front steps and let the stillness settle around her. She had always valued privacy. It was one of the rare things money couldn't easily buy. And now, once again, it was slipping from her fingers. She closed her eyes and tried to steady her thoughts. She reminded herself why she traveled incognito, why she chose simplicity over luxury most days. She wanted to connect with people on equal ground. She wanted to be treated like a human being, not a walking headline. After a few minutes, she stood up and went inside. She packed her bag slowly, folding each item with care. She wasn't running away. She just knew it was time to return to her responsibilities. When she checked out, the cafe owner from earlier happened to walk by. She paused and smiled warmly. "Leaving already?" the owner asked. "Yes. I think I've caused enough excitement here," the woman said with a tired laugh. The owner shook her head gently. "You didn't cause anything. People just don't always know how to act. But you handled it kindly." The woman appreciated those words more than she expected. "Thank you," she said softly, as she walked toward the main road to catch a ride back to the city. She felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The town had given her peace, even if only for a few hours. But it had also reminded her how easily people's curiosity could turn into something overwhelming. Still, she wasn't angry. She understood human nature while curiosity was normal. Excitement was normal. People didn't always realize how their actions affected someone else. She reached the bus stop and waited quietly. A gentle breeze blew across her face. She felt calmer now, ready to return to her world, ready to face whatever came next. As the bus approached, she took one last look at the quiet town. Then she stepped forward, unaware that the next part of her journey would bring even bigger surprises for her, to everyone around her. The bus ride back to the city started quietly, almost too quietly for her liking. She chose a seat near the window, hoping to disappear into the soft hum of the engine and the gentle sway of the road. She wanted time to think, to breathe, to put the last 2 days behind her. But something inside her told her that the story wasn't finished yet. Not even close. As the bus rolled forward, she watched the scenery shift from small-town simplicity to long stretches of open land. She felt a kind of peace in the changing landscape. It reminded her that life kept moving, no matter what anyone thought or said about her. But peace never lasted long around her. It was almost as if life enjoyed surprising her at the least expected moments. About half an hour into the ride, the bus slowed suddenly. People lifted their heads, confused. Through the window, she saw a police vehicle parked at an angle on the side of the road. An officer stood beside it, talking to the bus driver. Something about the officer's posture looked firm, but not threatening. A few passengers whispered nervously. "Did something happen?" Someone asked. She remained calm. She knew that unexpected stops weren't always signs of trouble. The driver stepped inside and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to make a brief stop. The officer wants to speak with one of our passengers." Every head turned, searching for someone who looked suspicious. She felt a strange chill run down her spine. She had a sudden feeling she knew exactly who they were there for. The officer entered the bus. He scanned the passengers one by one with a polite but serious expression, and then his eyes landed on her. He approached slowly, making sure not to cause panic. "Ma'am, may I have a moment with you?" The entire bus fell silent. She stood up calmly. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "Yes," the officer replied quickly. "Nothing to worry about. We were asked to contact you. Someone from the city sent a message for you." Few passengers gasped softly, as if this was more dramatic than anything they had seen in months. She nodded and followed the officer off the bus. The air outside was warm, with a gentle breeze brushing against the fields nearby. Another officer stood beside the vehicle, holding a small tablet. When she approached, he tapped the screen. "We received a direct request from the central administration," he explained. "They've been trying to reach you. Your office has been worried since the incident yesterday spread online. They wanted to confirm your safety." She sighed softly. Of course. News traveled fast, especially when her name was involved. "I'm fine," she said. "I just needed some time to myself." The second officer nodded. "Understood. They simply asked us to check on you." And he hesitated. "They also said someone is waiting for you in the city. Someone who insisted it was important." She raised an eyebrow. "Who?" He glanced at the tablet again. "One of your senior advisors. They said it concerns something urgent that happened this morning." For the first time since leaving the town, she felt a rush of concern. "Did they say what it was about?" "No, ma'am. Only that it needed your attention as soon as possible." She thanked them, then returned to the bus with the same calm expression she always kept. But inside, her thoughts spun faster than the bus wheels. When she sat back down, some passengers stared at her with wide eyes. Others looked away quickly, pretending they weren't curious. One elderly man leaned toward her quietly. "Hope everything is all right," he whispered. She offered a gentle smile. "Thank you. I'm sure it will be." But even she wasn't sure. The bus finally reached the city in the late afternoon. Traffic grew heavier, buildings grew taller, and the familiar rush of urban life surrounded her. She stepped off the bus and inhaled the city's busy air. It felt like returning to another version of herself, the version everyone else expected her to be. A black car was parked near the station entrance. The driver stepped out and approached her. "Ma'am," he said respectfully. "They're waiting for you." She nodded and stepped into the car. As the city streets blurred by, she stared out of the window, her mind racing with questions. She had faced all kinds of challenges before, but something about today felt different. Like life was preparing to show her something she wasn't expecting. When the car arrived at her office building, she stepped outside and walked through the tall glass doors. People greeted her with hurried nods, their expressions mixed with worry and relief. Her senior advisor stood near the elevator, holding a folder tight against his chest. "Thank goodness you're back," he said as soon as she approached. "What happened?" she asked. He didn't answer until the elevator doors closed behind them. "It's about the footage from the bus," he began. "It spread faster than we expected, but that's not the real issue. Earlier today, someone tried to twist the story. They posted a claim that you were using your position unfairly. They tried to make it sound like you intimidated the passengers." She froze. "That's not true," she said firmly. "I know," he replied. "But the post has been shared thousands of times. People are reacting without knowing the truth. We're working on clearing it up, but we needed you here." The elevator doors opened, and she stepped into her office. Papers were spread across the desk, multiple screens displayed news headlines, and her team was already working. She took a deep breath. Ethan had been working at the auto shop since early morning. By the time the sun started dropping behind the buildings, he was more than ready to call it a day. The shop wasn't fancy. It was a small place with cement floors, the smell of oil hanging in the air, and old metal fans humming loudly to fight the heat. Even though he was tired, he took a moment to wipe down his tools and organize the workbench. He liked ending the day with things in order. Just as he reached for the light switch in the garage, he heard the bell above the front door ring. At first he hoped it was just the wind, or maybe the delivery guy dropping off something. But when he heard quiet footsteps, he sighed and turned around. A woman stood at the counter. She looked like she had come straight from an office net blazer, pressed shirt, and a bag hanging over her shoulder. Her car keys were in her hand, and she gave him a polite smile, one of those smiles people give when they know they might be causing inconvenience. "Sorry. I know it's late," she said softly. "My car started making a strange noise on the way home. I didn't want to ignore it." Ethan glanced at the clock. 15 minutes past closing. He rubbed the back of his neck, thinking of the dinner waiting for him at home. But he also knew turning someone away felt wrong, especially if the car might break down later in the night. "It's all right," he replied, walking toward her. "What kind of noise?" She tried to explain it's something shaking, something clicking, something that felt like it might get worse. People always struggled to describe car sounds. Ethan had learned to read expressions more than words. Hers told him she was genuinely worried. "Let me take a quick look," he said. She nodded, grateful. "Thank you. I know it's late." Ethan stepped outside with her and saw the car parked near the main entrance. It wasn't brand new, but it was well-kept clean interior. Good paint, no dents. He opened the driver's door and noticed a subtle scent of lemon inside. He always found it interesting how people's cars reflected something about them. Some cars were messy. Some smelled like fast food. Hers looked almost perfect. He turned the key and listened carefully. The noise appeared almost instantly, rattling beneath the hood, light but steady. He pressed the gas gently, and the noise got louder. "All right," he said, shutting off the engine. "I'll pop the hood." As he inspected the engine, she stayed beside him quietly. Most customers talked while he worked asking questions, apologizing over and over, or trying to guess the problem with no clue what they were talking about. But she didn't do any of that. She just observed with calm eyes, hands folded in front of her. To Ethan, she seemed like someone who thought before speaking. Someone who didn't rush. Someone who carried herself with a kind of natural confidence, but not the arrogant kind. More like someone used to handling serious things. When he finished checking the most common causes, he straightened up. "Well," he said, "it looks like one of the brackets holding the alternator is loose. Might be a simple fix, or might need replacement. I'd have to lift the car to be sure. How long would that take?" she asked. Ethan glanced toward the shop. He had already shut down half the equipment. "If you want me to check it properly, it'll take some time. The shop's closed now, but if you leave the car, I can take a full look tomorrow morning." She nodded slowly as if thinking through her options. "I see. Is it safe to drive tonight?" He hesitated. He didn't want to scare her, but he also didn't want to lie. "It's not the worst thing in the world, but if that bracket fully comes loose, your alternator can stop working, and your battery will run out. That could leave you stuck somewhere." She lowered her eyes for a moment, then looked back at him. "Then I should probably leave it here." "Yeah, that's the safest choice." She agreed and reached into her bag for something. While she looked for her things, Ethan noticed something unusual inside her car: the laminated parking permit on the dashboard. It had an official seal on it. Most customers had permits for schools, private companies, or apartment buildings. This one looked more formal than that. It had a thin strip of coded numbers he didn't recognize. Maybe she worked for the government, he thought. It wasn't rare. The town had a district building where lots of officials worked. She probably handled paperwork or some office role. "Do you need anything from the car before I lock it in the garage?" he asked. "Yes," she said gently. "Just a folder." She reached inside and pulled out a dark folder with a simple label on it. Ethan didn't try to read it, but he noticed how carefully she held it, like it was important after handing him her contact information. She paused before leaving. "Could you write down the details of what you found?" she asked. "Just a short note about the bracket and anything else you noticed." Ethan raised an eyebrow. Customers usually didn't care for written explanations unless they needed it for insurance or company reimbursement. "You need a written note?" he asked. "If you don't mind," she said. It would be helpful. He didn't want to say no, but he was exhausted and ready to go home. Still, she had been polite and patient. He didn't want to come off as rude. "Sure," he said. "Give me a minute." He walked back inside the shop to grab a pen and form. As he wrote down his findings, he found himself wondering what made her so careful. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't confused. She was simply precise. That was the best word for her. When he returned, she accepted the paper with a grateful smile. "Thank you," she said. "This will be useful." "No problem," he replied. She gave him one last polite nod and walked toward the sidewalk. A moment later, a rideshare car pulled up, and she got inside. Ethan watched the car drive away before going back into the shop to lock up. He stood there for a moment, staring at her car inside the garage. Something about the whole encounter stuck in his mind. Maybe it was the way she observed everything so closely. Maybe it was the unusual parking permit. Maybe it was how calm she stayed, even when her car might be unsafe. But he shook off the thought. To him, she was just another customer one who came in late and happened to be polite. Nothing more. He turned off the lights, closed the shutter, and headed home. On the way, he kept thinking about her steady voice, her calm expression, and the way she carried herself. But he convinced himself it was nothing. Ethan had no idea that the next day, the truth about who she really was would change the whole atmosphere of the shop. He didn't know that he had just spoken to someone far more important than he ever imagined. He didn't know that the simple note he wrote half reluctantly would matter more than he could possibly expect, for now. All he knew was that a stranger had walked in at closing time and left a quiet mark. On his thoughts, Ethan woke up the next morning feeling a little more tired than usual. He hadn't slept well, though he couldn't put his finger on why. Maybe it was the late-night work. Maybe it was the way the woman from last night lingered in his thoughts. He didn't usually think about customers after they left, but something about her calm way of speaking, her quiet confidence, and the official-looking permit on her dashboard stuck in his mind. He shook it off, got ready for work, and grabbed a quick breakfast before heading to the shop. When he arrived, the morning sun cast long shadows across the pavement, and the shop was still quiet. He unlocked the front door, opened the shutters, and turned on the fans inside the garage. As he stepped in, he noticed her car parked exactly where he left it, clean, neat, and somehow a little mysterious. "All right," he muttered to himself. "Let's see what's going on with you." He set down his bag, washed his hands, and grabbed his tools. He wanted to finish the inspection before any walk-in customers showed up. That way he could call her early and give her an update. But as he worked, he found himself replaying small details from the night before: her steady gaze, the way she asked for a written note, the folder she carried like it held something important. The more he thought, the more he wondered who she really was. But he kept reminding himself that lots of people worked in professional offices around town. Anyone could have a neat car or a serious-looking folder. He was probably reading too much into it. He lifted the car and used a flashlight to look beneath the engine. It didn't take long for him to find the problem. The bracket was indeed loose, but the bolts around it showed signs of wear and stress. It looked like someone had worked on the car before and used the wrong parts. "That's not good," he said quietly. He checked the surrounding areas, the belt, the pulleys, the wiring. Everything else looked all right, but the bracket was definitely unstable. If she had continued driving it, it could have snapped or disconnected entirely. That would have caused a breakdown and possibly damaged other parts. Ethan lowered the car and wiped his hands on a cloth. He reached for the phone to call her, but before he could dial, he paused. She seemed like the careful type. She'd probably appreciate a full explanation, maybe even a list of options. He sat down and wrote the details clearly. What he found, what could happen if it wasn't fixed, and the possible ways to repair it. He was halfway through writing when the bell on the front door rang. The shop wasn't officially open yet, so he expected it to be someone asking for directions or dropping something off. But when he stepped into the office area, a man in uniform stood at the counter. The man wasn't a police officer, but he wore an official jacket with the town's emblem on it. Ethan recognized it. People who worked in city departments or public offices often wore it. "Morning," the man said. "Morning. How can I help you?" "I'm looking for a car that was left here overnight," the man replied. "A dark sedan." Ethan frowned slightly. "Yeah, it's here, but the owner didn't say anyone else would come for it." The man smiled politely. "I understand. I'm not here to pick it up. Just need to confirm something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notepad with some details written on it. "This car belongs to someone from the district office," the man explained. "She had a busy schedule today, and we just need to make sure everything's fine." Ethan blinked. "District office? What kind of position did she hold?" He tried not to look surprised. "Everything's all right," Ethan said carefully. "I'm working on it. The problem wasn't too serious, but it could have gotten worse." "That's good to hear," the man said. "She's very particular about safety," Ethan replied, remembering how she stood beside him last night, watching every step. "I noticed." The man gave a friendly nod and left. As the door closed behind him, Ethan felt strangely uneasy. Why would someone check on her car so early? Was she really that important? He tried to shake the feeling and went back to writing the details of her car's condition. When he finished, he finally picked up the phone and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "This is Ethan from the auto shop," he said. "I checked your car this morning." "Good morning," she replied. Her voice was just as calm as the night before. "What did you find?" He explained the issue, taking his time, but keeping his words simple. She listened without interrupting, though at times he could hear her scribbling something. "Maybe taking notes? So it's repairable?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "There are two ways. I can tighten the bracket and reinforce it, which is cheaper but might only last a year or so. Or I can replace the whole bracket with a proper one, which is more secure." "How much more secure?" she asked. "It'll last several years. Maybe longer." She didn't respond immediately. "Then replace it." "I'd rather not deal with the same problem again," okay, he said. "I'll get it done today. You can pick it up later. And thank you for calling so early." There was something in her tone, polite but firm, that made Ethan straighten up unconsciously. After the call ended, he set to work. The morning passed quickly as he completed the repair, checked other components just to be sure, and cleaned the engine area. When he finished, the car ran smoothly. No rattling, no shaking, no hint of a problem. He felt good about the result. He liked when things worked perfectly. Around noon, customers started coming and going. A few cars came in for oil changes and small issues. It turned into a normal day. By mid-afternoon, he almost forgot about her, but the calm didn't last. Around 3, the shop suddenly filled with the sound of engines, 2 cars pulling up in front of the entrance. Ethan looked up from the workbench, confused. One car was a black sedan. The other was a white SUV with tinted windows. He wiped his hands and walked toward the front. His coworker looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Expecting someone important?" the coworker joked. Ethan shook his head. "Not that I know." Before he could finish, the door opened and 2 men stepped inside. They weren't wearing police uniforms, but their formal clothing said enough. They looked official in a way that didn't need a badge. "Afternoon," one of them said, giving Ethan a short nod. "We're here for a vehicle." Ethan had the sudden, uncomfortable feeling that this had something to do with her. But before he could ask, the door opened again. She stepped in. The woman from last night walked into the shop with the same calm expression as before. But this time, she wasn't alone, and the atmosphere around her felt different, stronger, sharper. She was wearing a simple outfit, nothing special. But the way the men around her behaved made it clear she wasn't just some random office worker. Ethan swallowed without meaning to. "Good afternoon," she said, offering him a small smile. "I'm here for the car." "It's ready," Ethan replied, trying not to sound nervous. "I fixed the bracket and checked the rest of the engine. It's running smoothly now. May I take a look?" she asked. "Of course. Right this way." He led her into the garage. The two men followed but stayed near the entrance, watching the area. Ethan pretended not to notice them, though his thoughts raced. She walked around the car with practiced eyes. Not the quick glance most customers gave. She checked the hood alignment, the engine bay, even the area where he had placed the new bracket. "You did a good job," she said softly. "Thank you," he said. She straightened up and looked at him. "And the written note from last night? Thank you for taking the time. It was more useful than you realize." He frowned slightly, unsure what she meant by that, before he could ask. One of the men from the entrance approached. "Ma'am," the man said, "your meeting downtown is in 20 minutes. She nodded once. Ethan blinked. Meeting downtown? With two men escorting her? Something clicked quietly in his mind. He had seen enough official visitors come through the shop over the years. City inspectors, fire marshals, council members, even one or two judges. But none of them carried themselves like she did. None of them had people following them like protective shadows. None of them made the air feel heavier just by walking in. He finally realized she wasn't just someone from a district office. She was someone important. But he didn't know the full truth yet. Not then, for now. All he could do was stand there as she signed the paperwork, thanked him again, and prepared to leave, he thought. The situation couldn't get any stranger. He had no idea that the real surprise was still coming, and when it came, it would leave him speechless. Ethan didn't expect the day to feel so strange. After the woman picked up her car and left with the two men who seemed to be watching over her, the shop slowly went back to its normal rhythm. Cars came in, cars left, and he got busy with the usual repairs. But even while working, he found his thoughts drifting back to her. There was something about the calm way she had walked in, the quiet confidence she carried, and the respectful way the men spoke to her that kept replaying in his mind. He didn't know who she was, but she definitely wasn't an ordinary customer. The sense of mystery clung to him for the rest of the afternoon. When the shop finally closed, Ethan cleaned up his tools, locked the garage doors, and walked home. The evening breeze was cool and the sky held a soft orange glow. Normally, this walk helped him clear his mind. But today, he kept thinking about the woman and the odd way the day had unfolded. He wondered why she needed the written note, why someone had come early in the morning to check on her car, and why she moved with quiet authority, even in a simple outfit. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but he couldn't deny something unusual was going on. That night he ate dinner, watched a little TV, and went to bed early. But sleep didn't come quickly. He kept replaying the sound of her voice, the look in her eyes, the way she inspected her car as if it were evidence rather than just a vehicle. Eventually, he drifted off, still unsettled. The next morning, Ethan woke up early. The moment he stepped into the shop, he noticed something different. A black SUV was parked across the street. It wasn't a police car, but it had that look: dark windows, clean exterior, no visible markings. He tried not to stare as he unlocked the shop, but he couldn't help glancing at it again. It didn't move. No one stepped out. It just sat there, probably someone waiting for a friend, he muttered, shaking his head. He focused on his work instead. A couple of cars came in early for routine maintenance, and he got busy. About an hour later, He stepped outside to throw away some old parts, and that was when he noticed the SUV was gone. He felt relieved, though he didn't know why. Around noon, just as he was finishing up with a customer, the bell above the door rang again. Ethan looked up, expecting another walk-in instead. The woman from the previous 2 days stepped inside this time. She came alone. She wore a simple dark shirt and loose slacks, nothing fancy. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she carried a folder tucked under her. The same one he saw on the first night. Ethan straightened a little without meaning to. "Good afternoon," she said with that familiar calm tone. "Afternoon," he replied. "Everything all right with the car?" "Yes," she said, giving a soft nod. "It's running perfectly." "Thank you again." She paused for a moment, as if deciding how much to say. Then she stepped closer to the counter. "I actually came because I have a question," she said. "Sure," he said. "Curious." "The note you wrote for me," she continued, tapping lightly on the folder. "Did you keep a copy of it?" Ethan blinked. "No, I usually don't. Was I supposed to?" "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "You did nothing wrong. I just wanted to know." He nodded, though he still didn't understand why she asked. She hesitated, her eyes studying him in that same observant way he noticed before. It wasn't rude or invasive. It was more like she wanted to understand him fully before speaking. Finally, she said, "Your note helped clear up an important matter." "Important?" Ethan asked, confused. "It was just a description of the noise and what I found." "Yes," she said softly, "but it confirmed something that mattered in a different situation." Ethan felt a small shiver of uncertainty. He didn't want to ask too many questions, but his curiosity was rising. Before he could say anything, she continued, "There's something else," she added. "I wanted to apologize if my visit yesterday caused any discomfort." "You didn't do anything wrong," he said at once. She studied him again, as if checking his sincerity. "I know the 2 men who came with me made things look unusual," she said. Ethan chuckled nervously. Yeah, a little." They looked pretty serious. Her lips curved slightly in a small smile. Not amused, but understanding. "They're protective," she said. "Sometimes more than necessary. But I appreciate their support." There was another pause. Then she took a slow breath. "I want to be honest with you," she said. "I wasn't just another customer coming in with a car problem." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He had been sensing this moment was coming. She set the folder gently on the counter. "My job requires me to be careful with everything," she said. "Even small things, even simple notes from a mechanic." His heart thumped. He waited. She looked him in the eyes. "I am the district attorney," she said quietly. The words hit him harder than he expected. The district attorney? The one who oversaw major legal matters in the region? The one people talked about on the news sometimes? The one who handled cases involving serious issues, big decisions, and legal pressures? He felt his breath catch. "You're the district attorney?" repeated softly. "Yes," she said, with a calmness that almost seemed out of place. "That's why things seemed unusual. The men you saw were part of my security detail. When I visited you, I was coming from a long meeting. When you saw me the next day, they were making sure I got to my next appointment safely." Ethan stared at her, unsure what to say. He thought back to the neat car, the permit on the dashboard, the way she observed everything, and the way she asked for a written explanation. Suddenly, everything made sense. She watched his face carefully, as if gauging his reaction. "If my position made anything awkward," she said quietly, "I'm sorry. I don't want people to feel uneasy around me." "Oh," he said quickly. "It's not that. I didn't expect it. Most people don't," she said. He took a breath, trying to collect his thoughts. "I hope I didn't say anything wrong when you first came in," he said. Her expression softened. "You were honest," she said. "You told me what the problem was and didn't try to take advantage. That's more than I can say about some people I deal with." Ethan felt a small burst of warmth in his chest. He hadn't done anything special. He had just done his job. But hearing that from someone like her meant more than he expected. "You seemed very calm the whole time," he said. "Even last night when it was late." She gave a quiet laugh, Not loud, but genuine. "When you work in my field," she said, "you learn to stay calm, even when things feel complicated." For the first time, Ethan saw a hint of tiredness in her eyes, not weakness, but the kind of tiredness that comes from carrying responsibility every day. He realized she wasn't just important. She was someone who lived under constant pressure. "I needed that note," she continued, touching the folder again. It helped clarify that the issue with the car wasn't caused by anything else. There was a concern about whether someone had tampered with it. Ethan stiffened, startled. "Tampered with it? Turned out to be nothing," she said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding? But your explanation helped clear it up?" He let out a breath of relief. He didn't want to get tangled in anything dangerous. "I hope everything's all right," he said. "It is now," she replied, "thanks to small details." She glanced at the shop around them, the fans humming, the toolbox on the side, the half-open garage door letting in sunlight. "Sometimes," she said softly, "people in my position rely on strangers more than they realize." Her words hung in the air for a moment. Then she picked up her folder. "I didn't want you to wonder," she added. "You deserve to know the truth." Ethan nodded slowly. He appreciated her honesty. He appreciated the fact that she took time out of her busy schedule to come back, just to explain things. "It means a lot that you told me," he said quietly. She offered him a small smile, one that felt warmer than the ones before. "I'm glad," she said. She gave a polite nod and turned to leave. Ethan watched as she walked toward the door. But before she stepped out, she stopped and glanced back. "If my car ever needs anything else," she said, "I'll be sure to bring it here. You do good work." "Thank you," he said, feeling a flush of pride. Then she left. The bell above the door rang softly as it closed behind her. Ethan stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty doorway, still processing everything. He had thought she was just another customer. Now he knew the truth: she was the district attorney, and somehow the story between them didn't feel over yet. The morning after the uproar on the bus felt different for her. It was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for her next step. She woke up with her mind replaying every detail from the day before the raise. Voices, the shocked faces, the moment people discovered who she truly was. It hadn't been her intention to reveal anything. She had simply wanted to travel like anyone else, without stares, without whispers, without people treating her differently. But now the truth was out there, and she couldn't take it back. She sat by the window of the small guest house she had found late the previous night. Sunlight warmed her hands as she wrapped them around her cup of tea. She wasn't someone who usually enjoyed quiet mornings, but today she needed a moment to think. She had spent years keeping her identity low-key, avoiding the spotlight, even though she easily could have lived in it. After yesterday, she wondered if people would start looking at her differently again. She knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. She had responsibilities back home, a business that needed her signature on new projects, a foundation waiting for her approval on a new outreach program, and people who trusted her decisions. Still, she enjoyed moments where she could walk freely, blend in, not feel the weight of expectations on her shoulders. She finished her tea and stepped outside. The cool morning breeze brushed across her face as she started walking down the street. She had decided to explore the town before heading back to the city. There was something calming about watching ordinary life unfold around her shopkeepers opening their stores, children hurrying to school, and the smell of fresh bread drifting from the bakery on the corner. She walked into a small cafe that looked like it had been there for years. The door chimed when she entered, and the owner, an older woman with soft eyes, greeted her warmly. There was no trace of recognition in her face, which made the woman feel relieved. She took a seat near the window. When the owner placed a plate of warm pastries in front of her, the woman felt grateful for something so simple. "First time in town?" the owner asked gently. She nodded, just passing through. The owner smiled. "It's a quiet place, but good for thinking." She returned the smile. "That's exactly what I needed." For a few peaceful minutes, she enjoyed her breakfast. But then, as if the calm had only been a small break in a storm, a group of travelers entered the cafe. They were chatting loudly, the kind of voices that filled any room they entered. One of them glanced at her and froze. She instantly recognized the expression, that tiny spark of recognition, the quick widening of eyes. She lowered her gaze, hoping they would brush it off. But the man whispered something to his friends, and within seconds, 3 faces were looking in her direction. "Hey, you were on that bus yesterday?" one of them blurted out. Her shoulders tensed. She kept her tone calm. "Yes, I was." That woman they were talking about online?" The same man continued, excitement rising in his voice. "Online? So the incident had already spread beyond the passengers?" She sighed quietly. She had known this might happen, but hoped it wouldn't. The older cafe owner looked confused. She glanced at the woman as if silently asking if she was all right. The woman gave her a small, reassuring smile. Soon the travelers approached her table. They weren't rude, just overly curious. "Is it true?" one asked. "Are you really, that wealthy? Like they said?" The woman slowly set her fork down. "I prefer not to discuss that. I'm just here to enjoy breakfast." Their excitement dimmed slightly, replaced by awkwardness. "Right, sorry, it's just... You don't meet someone like that every day." She nodded politely. "I understand, but I hope you'll treat me like anyone else you meet here." They exchanged looks, nodded, and finally stepped back. The owner returned, placing a fresh cup of tea on her table, even though she hadn't ordered one. "On the house," the owner said softly. "People sometimes get too carried away. Don't mind them." The woman smiled gratefully. "Thank you." The moment passed quietly, but inside she felt a mix of emotions: gratitude for the owner's kindness, sadness that she could never fully blend in, and uncertainty about what would happen next. After finishing her meal, she paid and stepped outside again. She continued walking until she reached a small path that led to the river. The water shimmered under the sunlight, and the sound of it flowing eased her mind. She sat on a nearby bench and breathed deeply. She had always known her life was different. She'd never asked for wealth or attention. She'd simply inherited a legacy built long before she was born. But she had also worked hard to grow it, to use it thoughtfully, to help people who needed support. This was her world, the world where even a small misunderstanding could turn into something large and loud. Her advisor placed the folder in front of her. "We pulled the security footage from the bus and the nearby bus stop. It proves you didn't do anything wrong. But people still need to hear your side." She looked through the photos and documents. Everything was clear. Everything was in her favor. Still, she felt a pinch of sadness. She didn't want to be in the news. She didn't want the spotlight. She just wanted a peaceful trip. "What do you want to do?" the advisor asked. She closed the folder. "Tell them the truth, but don't attack anyone. Just explain what happened." Calmly. He nodded. "We'll prepare a statement." As he left the room, she sat back in her chair. She stared at the city skyline through the window-tall buildings. Busy streets, lives moving fast and loud. She thought about the people on the bus. The quiet ones. The curious ones. The kind ones. She thought about the woman from the cafe, the vendor at the market, the elderly man on the bus. They didn't care about titles or wealth. They cared about how people treated each other, and that, she realized, was something she needed to protect, not just for herself, but for everyone who felt overwhelmed by the noise of the world. Later that evening, she stepped in front of a camera for a short recording. She didn't wear anything fancy. She didn't read from a script. She simply spoke from the heart. She explained what happened on the bus. She explained that she had traveled like any other passenger. She talked about the importance of treating each other with respect, no matter who someone was or WASN. Single quotes. Her tone was calm, genuine. When the recording ended, her advisor exhaled in relief. "That was perfect." She smiled softly. "I hope it helps." The team uploaded the message. Within hours, comments started pouring in, voices of support, understanding, and appreciation. People apologized for jumping to conclusions. Others praised her for staying calm despite everything. For the first time in 2 days, she felt her chest relax. Later that night, she went to the rooftop of her building. The sky above the city looked soft and quiet, the kind of quiet she had been craving. As she leaned against the railing, she let the cool air brush against her face. She thought about her journey of the bus, the town, the crowd, the misunderstandings, and the unexpected kindness she met along the way. And she realized something important. Even when people made mistakes, even when curiosity turned into noise, there were always moments of kindness. Always people who understood. Always someone willing to listen. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The world was loud, but her heart felt peaceful. She didn't need to hide who she was. She didn't need to run from attention. She simply needed to stay true to herself, calm, steady, and human. The next morning, she woke up early and prepared for a new day. She walked into her office with confidence, ready to continue her work. Ready to face the world with a clear mind. The story that had started on a simple bus ride had become something bigger, a reminder that people judged quickly, reacted quickly, but also learned quickly. And she learned something too. No matter how unexpected life became, she could always choose how to respond with patience. With understanding and with grace, her journey was far from over. But she was ready for whatever came next, because now, more than ever, she understood the true strength of staying calm in a world that often rushed too fast. And with that quiet strength, she stepped forward one steady breath at a time.